إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Today then, before we go back to al-Aqidah, al-Wasitiyyah, there is going to be a lesson regarding the principles of the names and attributes of Allah. Just a summary of some of the main points, because it will help you to understand al-Aqidah, al-Wasitiyyah better also. So here then, from the principles regarding the names and attributes of Allah, the first one that we can mention regarding the names of Allah is that Asma'ullahi Ta'ala kulluha husna. That the names of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, all of them are husna, meaning they are at the pinnacle of their beauty and at the pinnacle of their goodness of perfection without any deficiency or shortcoming. And this has been mentioned in the Quran in various places. So for example, in Surah Taha, it says, وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى فَادْعُوهُ بِهَا. That indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the perfect and beautiful names, so call upon Him with them. And also in Surah Al-Hashr, it is mentioned, in Surah Al-A'raf was that ayah from Surah Al-A'raf. Then in Surah Taha, Allahu la ilaha illahu lahul asma'ul husna. That indeed Allah, He is the one alone worthy of worship, no one except Him, and He has the beautiful and perfect names. And also Allah mentioned in Surah Al-Hashr, Lahul Asma'ul Husna Yusabbihu Lahu Ma Fis Samawat. That He has the beautiful and perfect names. So these are three examples in the Quran where it speaks about the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being Al-Husna. Al-Husna, that they are at the peak and the pinnacle of their perfection and beauty, that they are the best of the names without any shortcoming, without any deficiency of any nature. Baligha fil husn غايته, that they are at the pinnacle and the peak of their perfection. So that is one thing we say in regards to the names of Allah, that all of them are Al-Husna. وذلك لأنها متضمنة لصفات كاملة لا نقص فيها بوجه من الوجوه لا احتمالا ولا تقديرا. And that is because the names of Allah incorporate perfect attributes that have no deficiency in them from any perspective, from any angle whatsoever, attributes of perfection. So the names of Allah they incorporate or they have within them, from them, the attributes of perfection that have no deficiency from any aspect within them. An example of that is the name Al-Hayy. Al-Hayy. Like you hear people's names are Abdul Hayy. So Al-Hayy is one of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Al-Hayy. And this particular name incorporates the attribute of life. متضمن للحياة الكاملة التي لم تسبق بعدم ولا يلحقها زوال، الحياة المستلزمة لكمال الصفات من العلم والقدرة والسمع والبصر وغيرها. So here, this particular name of Allah, Al-Hayy, it incorporates the attribute of life, a life of absolute perfection that was never preceded by any non-existence, and neither will there be any end to it. A life that is of perfection. It was not preceded by any non-existence, neither will it come to an end. And it is a life that necessitates the perfection of attributes to Allah, from knowledge and ability and hearing and seeing and other than that. Another example would be the name Al-Alim. Al-Alim, the all-knowing, the all-knowledgeable. This is a name from the names of Allah, which incorporates the attribute of knowledge. Al-Ilm, knowledge upon perfection. الذي لم يسبق بجهل ولا يلحقه نسيان, a knowledge that was not preceded by ignorance, and neither does any forgetfulness occur upon it. Because our knowledge is preceded by ignorance. Before you have knowledge of an affair, you are ignorant of that affair. Then you gain knowledge of it, and perhaps after you gain knowledge of it, you may still forget it. But when we speak of the attribute of Allah, Al-Ilm, from His name Al-Alim, then it is knowledge upon perfection that was not preceded by any ignorance, and neither will any forgetfulness ever occur upon it. And Allah mentioned in the Quran, علمها عند ربي في كتاب لا يضل ربي ولا ينسى. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala لا ينسى, does not forget. فالعلم الواسع المحيط بكل شيء جملة وتفصيلا. So the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all encompassing, specifically and generally in every affair. The knowledge of Allah is all encompassing for all affairs, سواء ما يتعلق بأفعاله أو أفعال خلقه, whether it is in connection to His actions or the actions of the creation, as Allah mentioned, وَعِنْدَهُ مَفَاتِحُ الْغَيْبِ لَا يَعْلَمُهَا إِلَّا هُ, that He has the keys to the unseen, and nobody knows them except Him. وَيَعْلَمُ مَا فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ, and He knows what is on the land and in the sea. وَمَا تَسْقُطُ مِنْ وَرَقَةٍ إِلَّا يَعْلَمُهَا, and there is not a leaf that falls off a tree except that He knows of that. Regarding that, Al-Imam Al-Qurtubi mentioned in his tafsir that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows when a leaf falls off a tree. And imagine all of the trees of the world, trillions and trillions of trees in the world. Any tree, anywhere, a leaf falls off it. So Allah knows where the leaf has fallen from which tree in the planet, and how long that leaf it fluttered in the air, and where it landed exactly on the ground. That is all within the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He mentioned, وَلَا حَبَّةٍ فِي ظُلُمَاتِ الْأَرْضِ وَلَا رَطْبٍ وَلَا يَابِسٍ إِلَّا فِي كِتَابٍ مُبِينٍ. The ayah continues to mention the vast or the vastness of the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the point here is Al-Alim is the name of Allah, and the attribute from that is Al-Ilm. One of the points that the scholars they have mentioned here is then that every name of Allah has an attribute. All of the asma, they have sifat. Every name of Allah has an attribute. Not like the people of innovation, some of them who claimed, yes, Allah has these names, but there are no attributes to them. Allah is Al-Alim, but without knowledge. That's what they claimed. Rather, we say all of these names of Allah, then they are indicative of an attribute. So every name of Allah has an attribute, like Al-Alim, Al-Ilm. And then there are some attributes that may not necessarily have a name, which means that there are more attributes than there are names. That's why the scholars they say Babu Sifat Awsa' min Babil Asma', that the attributes of Allah are greater or in number than the names of Allah, because every name has an attribute. So there are at least the same number of attributes as there are names, but then on top of that there are more attributes. So in fact there are more attributes than there are names. So then here al-Shaykh al-ʿUthaymīn gives a third example. He says Ar-Rahman. That is one of the names of Allah also, Ar-Rahman, and that incorporates the perfection of mercy. Ar-Rahmah. Allah is Ar-Rahman, so He has the attribute of Ar-Rahmah, of mercy. التي قال عنها رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, the mercy of Allah that the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم mentioned by saying, الله أرحم بعباده من هذه بولدها. That Allah is more merciful to His servants than this one, meaning this mother, is with her child. Certainly the mercy of a mother to her child is strong and significant. Yet, despite the level of mercy that there is between the mother to her child, The mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is greater than that. And we mentioned these ayat already in the earlier section of al-Wasitiyyah. وَرَحْمَتِي وَسِعَتْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. That my mercy encompasses everything. My mercy encompasses everything. وَقَالَ عَنْ دُعَاءِ الْمَلَائِكَةِ. And Allah mentioned regarding the dua of the angels for the believers. When the angels make dua for the believers, رَبَّنَا وَسِعْتَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ رَحْمَةً وَعِلْمًا. Our Lord, you have engulfed, encompassed everything with your mercy and your knowledge. So now then, when we talk about the names of Allah being al-Husna, al-Husn في أسماء الله تعالى يكون باعتبار كل اسم على انفراده ويكون باعتبار جمعه إلى غيره فيحصل بجمع الاسم إلى الآخر كمال فوق كمال. When we talk about the names of Allah being Husna, at the pinnacle and the peak of absolute perfection and beauty, we are talking about that from different perspectives. Each name of Allah individually is within that description of being from the Husna, each name of Allah individually. But then, when some of the names of Allah are combined, then there is an even greater amount of that Husna in relation to a combination of the names of Allah. So every name of Allah alone individually, it applies that they are all Asma Husna. But then when you combine some of the names of Allah together, there is a degree of that Husna even more and above what there was individually even. فَهُوَ كَمَالٌ فَوْقَ كَمَالٍ. It is a level of perfection above and more than the perfection that was already there for the names of Allah individually. So Asma'ullah Ta'ala kulluha husna ala infiradiha. All of the names of Allah are at the pinnacle of perfection and beauty alone individually. وَقَدْ يَنْضَافُ إِلَى هَذَا الْحُسْنِ الَّذِي اكْتَسَبَهُ الْإِسْمُ اكْتِسَابًا ذَاتِيًّا يَنْضَافُ إِلَيْهِ حُسْنٌ آخَرٌ بِانضِمَامِهِ إِلَى غَيْرِهِ. But then, those individual names can then sometimes have an additional level of husn, of that perfection and beauty in them, when they are joined together along with other names of Allah. When they are paired together or joined together with other names. فَيَكُونُ مِن مَجْمُوعِ الْأَمْرَيْنِ كَمَالٌ آخَرٌ. So two names by themselves have that perfection. When you join them together and you mention them as a pair or more than that together, then there is another degree of perfection now as a combination for those names on top of the perfection that already existed individually for those names. وهذا موجود في القرآن كثير فدائما يقرن الله تعالى بين اسمين تجد أن في ضم أحدهما إلى الآخر كمالا لا يحصل بانفراد أحدهما عن الآخر وضربنا لذلك مثلا. So this is something which occurs often in the Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may combine between the mentioning of two names, and by doing so there is a degree of perfection and goodness and beauty that arises for those names above already what those names have individually. وهو نعم. So for example, Al-Azizu one of the names of Allah. Al-Hakimu, one of the names of Allah. But you'll see in the Quran, Al-Azizul Hakim. Put together, Al-Azizul Hakim. Al-Aziz by itself has that perfection. Al-Hakim by itself has that perfection. Then they are put together, Al-Azizul Hakim. Now there is a perfection above, or another degree of perfection as a combination. فَكُلٌّ مِّنْهُمَا دَالًّا عَلَى الْكَمَالِ الْخَاصِ الَّذِي يَقْتَضِي. Each one of those names has its specific perfection that it indicates. وَهُوَ الْعِزَّةِ فِي الْعَزِيزِ وَالْحُكْمِ وَالْحِكْمَةِ فِي الْحَكِيمِ. So in the name Al-Aziz, you have Al-Izzah, that might and power and majesty of Allah. In Al-Hakim, you have the Hukm and the Hikmah, that the rulership and the wisdom and these affairs of perfection are for Allah from the name Al-Hakim. So they are individually mentioned for Al-Aziz, Al-Izzah, Al-Hakim, Al-Hukm, Al-Hikmah. But then, when you put the two of them together, Al-Aziz, Al-Hakim, وَالْجَمْعُ بَيْنَهُمَا دَالٌ عَلَى كَمَالٍ آخَرٍ وَهُوَ أَنَّ عِزَّتَهُ تَعَالَى مَقْرُونَةٌ بِالْحِكْمَةِ. This now indicates to you that the might and power and majesty of Allah is connected with and together with that wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and that rulership of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now you have the combination of those two affairs. فَعِزَّتُهُ لَا تَقْتَضِي ظُلْمًا وَجَوْرًا وَسُوءَ فِعْلٍ. So the might and power and majesty of Allah does not mean that Allah will oppress anyone with that might and power and majesty, or that anyone will be wronged because of that might and power and majesty. Rather, Allah is Al-Aziz, Al-Hakim, that Allah deals with His servants upon wisdom, upon justice. And so the combination of those two names indicates another degree and another level of perfection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. كما قد يكون من أعزاء المخلوقين فإن العزيز منهم قد تأخذه العزة بالإثم فيظلم ويجور ويسيء التصرف. In creation, when a person becomes powerful, he has authority, he has power, then as a consequence of that, he may oppress others. He may do wrong to others with that power and authority. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Aziz, Al-Hakim, and deals with His servants upon justice and no oppression. And that might and majesty of Allah does not ever fall into what the creation fall into with their might and power and majesty, or might and power. وكذلك حكمه تعالى وحكمته مقرونان بالعز الكامل. And the other way around too. The rulership of Allah and this wisdom of Allah, that is all connected with that might and power and majesty. Because if a person has rulership but doesn't have any might or power or majesty, then perhaps he would be deficient in his ability to rule. So now you see there is no deficiency to Allah at all. He is Al-Hakim, and He with that is Al-Aziz. So you see how combinations of names, then you find another degree, another level of meaning and understanding and of beauty and perfection on top of what each name indicated individually. That is the first principle mentioned in Al-Qawāid al-Muthlā, that all of the names of Allah are Al-Husna. وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى فَادْعُوهُ بِهَا. and that each and every name of Allah is within that. But then on top of that, combinations of the names of Allah indicate an even higher and another level and degree and another perspective and angle of that beauty and perfection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the names of Allah. The second principle, al-Qaaidah al-Thāniyah, أسماء الله تعالى أعلام وأوصاف. That the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are أعلام وأوصاف. فهي باعتبار دلالتها على الذات أعلام، وباعتبار دلالتها على المعاني أوصاف. ومثال ذلك السميع يدل على الله ويكون بهذا الاعتبار علما. The names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are أعلام, alam, and they are أوصاف, wasf. That they are names and they are indicative of attributes. The names of Allah, they are names in terms of the fact that they indicate to you Allah. When we say Al-Ghafur, Ar-Rahman, As-Sami', all of those names are indicating to you Allah. They are all names of Allah. So from that angle, all of the names of Allah are names that indicate the essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whenever those names are mentioned, then it refers to Allah. Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Al-Ghafur, As-Sami', all of the names of Allah, they are referencing to you Allah. So they are a'lam in that regard. But then they are also awsaf. Those names are also indicative of attributes, because as we said, every name indicates and incorporates an attribute. So for example, the name As-Sami', As-Sami' indicates to you Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is a name of Allah, but it also indicates to you the attribute of hearing. باعتبار أن السميع متضمن للسمع وأنه يسمع عز وجل كل صوت تكون صفة فهي أعلام وأوصاف. So As-Sami' is a name of Allah, but then it incorporates As-Sam', hearing. So from that angle we see that it is an attribute being indicated. Hence all of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are a'lam and alam, meaning they indicate to you Allah, they are names of Allah, and they are awsaf because they indicate to you the attributes that are incorporated from those names. Shaykh al-Uthaymin gives some examples here to explain this further. He says, وَلِهَذَا نُسَمِّيَ هَذَا الرَّجُلَ عَبْدَ اللَّهِ. That perhaps when it comes to the creation, the asl when it comes to the names of creation is that they indicate as a'lam, but not necessarily at all as awsaf. When it comes to the creation, a name indicates the name of that person, but it does not necessitate an attribute incorporated from that name for the person. An example the Shaykh mentions is the name Abdullah. Somebody could be called Abdullah, and he may be the most severe kafir, but his name is Abdullah, perhaps. So it is an alam, he's Abdullah, they know him as Abdullah, but in terms of his attribute, he could be akthar ibadillah, the most severe in his kufr from the servants of Allah. Another example he gives is the name Ali. Ali, linguistically from ulu, somebody elevated and lofty. Ali, elevated and lofty. So it's the name of a person, Ali, Ali, Ali. But that person may be a disgraceful individual. He may be from the worst of the people, degraded and disgraceful individual, with the worst of the behavior and character and speech, a liar, a person upon deceit, a person upon backbiting, a person upon cheating, upon beating others, could be the most degraded individual, yet his name is Ali. He's called Ali. His parents called him Ali. His name is Ali. So the alam is there upon him, but the attribute non-existent. So in creation, the asl is that names for us are names, and they do not necessitate awsaf, matching the name for that person. Whereas with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His names, they are indicative of the attributes with it, without doubt. So as-Sami' with as-Sam', al-Alim with al-Ilm, al-Rahman with al-Rahmah. The Shaykh gives many more examples here. Somebody could be called Khalid. Khalid linguistically means Khalid, such and such is Khalidun Mukhalladun Finnar, for example. Khalid means like everlasting, forever, linguistically. Something that remains, khalada, to remain and to be forever. But obviously a person is never going to be forever. So you're never going to have that type of meaning. So Khalid alam, wa huwa laysa bi mukhallad. Khalid linguistically is a title, is a name, is a proper noun for a person, but he's not mukhallad. He's not going to remain forever in the linguistic sense of that and what comes from it. He gives another example, many here. Hakim. Somebody could be Hakim. نسمي حكيما علما عليه وهو من أسفه عباد الله. That somebody could be called Hakim, but he's the most foolish of the people. He's not Hakim at all. And somebody could be Muhammad. His name may be Muhammad, linguistically meaning praiseworthy, and yet he could be Mudhammam. He could be degraded in reality the way he is. So for us, these are names. And they could indicate that good character in the person, but for us they do not necessitate that. The asl is they are names, but with Allah they are names and definitely awsaf as well. That is what is mentioned here in the second principle. The Shaykh, he goes on to give a bit more detail. أعلام باعتبار دلالتها على الذات. The names of Allah, they indicate Allah, the essence of Allah. And the awsaf is what they indicate from the meanings of those names. What is the meaning of that name? فهي بالاعتبار الأول, and this is another point here now. In terms of all of the names of Allah now being a'lam, names indicative of Allah, and being awsaf, the meanings behind those names and the attributes. From the perspective of all of the names of Allah being a'lam, then they are all mutaradifa. They are all synonyms, as we say in the basic linguistic meaning, i.e. that they are all the same. How are all of the names of Allah as a'lam the same? Because all of them indicate to Allah. Ar-Rahman is Allah. Al-Hakim is Allah. As-Sami' is Allah. All of those names as a'lam indicate Allah. So they are all the same. In that sense, they are all the same. They all indicate Allah. Whereas the awsaf, from that angle, now the names of Allah are all different, mutabayina, because all of the names indicate a different meaning. The As-Sami' about the hearing, Al-Alim about the knowledge, Ar-Rahim about the mercy. So the names of Allah as A'lam, they are considered mutaradifa. They are same synonyms, they indicate the same thing. Whereas in terms of them being awsaf, they are mutabayina, they are different now, because they indicate different meanings, each of the names of Allah. So he says, for example, Al-Hayyu, Al-Alimu, Al-Qadiru, Al-Sami'u, all of these, they indicate musamman wahid. They are all about one name, one essence, the essence of Allah. But individually in their awsaf, they are talking about different things. Al-Hayy, about the perfection of life to Allah. Al-Alim, the perfection of knowledge. Al-Qadir, the perfection of that ability and power. So you see the difference from the two perspectives, the names of Allah as A'lam and the names of Allah as Awsaf. And so just even up to that point, it starts to become clear straight away. Shaykh mentions the misguidance of the people of innovation when they claimed that they accept the names of Allah but they don't accept the attributes. Some of them, they said that. Then for them, where have the awsaf gone? For them, they are saying, okay, we accept the names of Allah as A'lam, but there are no awsaf and there are no meanings and no attributes. The Shaykh says, بِهَذَا عُلِمَ ضَلَالُ مَنْ سَلَبُوا أَسْمَاءَ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى مَعَانِيَا مِنْ أَهْلِ التَّعْطِيلِ فقالوا إن الله سميع بلا سمع وبصير بلا بصر وعزيز بلا عزة وهكذا. So they began saying Allah is Sami'un, the all-hearing, but without hearing. And that Allah is Basirun, the all-seeing, but without seeing. And that Allah is Azizun bila Izzah, without the power and might and majesty, but He is Aziz. So they affirm the names, some of them, and they rejected the attributes, and we can see the misguidance of that. Then, after that, the third principle, القاعدة الثالثة أسماء الله تعالى إن دلت على وصف متعد تضمنت ثلاثة أمور. If the names of Allah, if a name of Allah indicates an attribute that is muta'addin, muta'addin meaning that it goes beyond Allah onto the creation, a name that has an attribute where the impact of it goes upon the creation, then in that case there are three things incorporated there. Firstly, ثبوت ذلك الاسم لله. We affirm that name to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We affirm that name to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. ثبوت ذلك الاسم لله عز وجل. Secondly, ثبوت الصفة التي تضمنها لله عز وجل. The affirmation of the attribute. You affirm the name, you affirm the attribute, and then there may be a third aspect too. If the name is muta'addin, and that is ثبوت حكمها ومقتضاها. That which results from that name and attribute. For example, that Allah is Ghafoor, or that Allah is Rahim. So we affirm that these are names of Allah, Ghafoor, Rahim. We affirm the attributes that they indicate, Maghfirah, Rahmah, forgiveness and mercy. And then we affirm the impact, the consequence of those names and attributes, that the mercy and forgiveness of Allah is manifest in the creation. It is manifest in the creation. So then, with these types of names where there is a transitive effect from them, then we affirm that manifestation of it within the creation. So with Allah being Ghafoor and Rahim, we affirm the names, we affirm the attributes, and we affirm the consequences of that, the mercy and the forgiveness occurring upon creation. لهذا استدل أهل العلم على سقوط الحد عن قطاع الطريق بالتوبة. Some of the scholars, they used this principle to say that the bandits, the highway robbers, the highway robbers who stop the people on their tracks, steal from them, they rob from them, their caravans, the bandits, that if they repent, then the Islamic punishment is relieved from them. They are relieved of the Islamic punishment if they repent. Because in the Quran it says, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ تَابُوا مِنْ قَبْلِ أَن تَقْدِرُوا عَلَيْهِمْ. Except for the ones from those bandits and قُطَّاعُ الطُّرُقِ, except for the ones who repent before you get a hold of them. If they repent already before you get a hold of them, فَعَلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Then know that Allah is Ghafoor, Allah is Rahim. So then the scholars, they said, Allah is telling us, if they repent before you get them, then know that Allah is Ghafoor and Allah is Rahim. They said, what does that mean? Know that Allah is Ghafoor and Allah is Rahim. They said, we know then these names of Allah, the attributes from them are Maghfirah and Rahmah. So they said, perhaps this ayah is indicating to us then that if they repent before you get to them, then it is mercy and forgiveness that is applied to them. Because that is the consequence or the impact from the names of Allah, Ghafoor and Rahim. And that they are the two names that Allah mentioned at the end of this ayah. That if they repent before you get a hold of them, then Allah is Ghafoor and Rahim. They said the meaning of that is Maghfirah and Rahmah. So khalas, in that case they are left alone and you do not implement the punishment upon them based upon that ayah like that. The ayah doesn't say, then don't do anything to them, then leave them. Doesn't say it explicitly like that. But from the understanding of what the names and attributes of Allah are and the meanings that they indicate and the consequences and the manifestations of them on creation, they said, khalas, if Allah is telling us that if you haven't caught them and they repent, then no. Remember, Allah is Ghafoor and Rahim. They said the manifestation of that is Maghfirah and mercy. So khalas, in that case, you forgive them and have mercy upon them and do not implement the punishment upon them. So the point is, if a name of Allah is transitive in that way, it is muta'addi in that way, then you affirm the name, you affirm the attribute, and you affirm the manifestation of that, the consequences of that, what emanates from that upon the creation thereafter. As-Sami' is another example. As-Sami', so we affirm that one of the names of Allah is As-Sami', the all-hearing. We then also affirm that hearing is an attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then the effect of that is, the manifestation in creation is that Allah hears everything and all that there is, hears all of the sounds and hears all of the voices, hears all of your speech, all of your dua. That is the manifestation of that in creation then, or the consequence and the effect of that in creation then. So there are three things in that case. What if a name of Allah is not muta'addi? That the name and the attribute are restricted to Allah, that there is no direct manifestation or no direct consequence or impact directly that comes upon creation. Then in that case you affirm the name and you affirm the attribute. An example of that would be like the name of Allah, Al-Hayy. Allah is Al-Hayy. That's the name of Allah, we affirm it. The attribute from that Allah has a life of absolute perfection from every aspect and angle. But then there isn't a direct from that name. Of course, Allah is upon perfection of life, then generally you can say a lot of things. But specifically from there, then it wouldn't be considered muta'addi like as-Sami' is. So in this case, Al-Hayy يتضمن إثبات الحي اسما لله وإثبات الحياة صفة له. And that's it then. So when a name is muta'addi, there are three things to bear in mind. When a name is not, then there are just the two. When the name is not muta'addi, that there is no direct consequence or impact or effect, then in that case you affirm the name, you affirm the attribute. When there is, then you affirm the name, you affirm the attribute, and you affirm that manifestation or effect from that name and attribute upon the creation. The fourth principle mentioned here, دلالة أسماء الله تعالى على ذاته وصفاته تكون بالمطابقة وبالتضمن وبالالتزام. This one sometimes people struggle with. That the names of Allah indicate the essence of Allah in different ways. The names of Allah indicate the essence of Allah and the attributes of Allah either by al-mutabaqah, we'll come to all of these, al-tadammun and al-iltizam. Here then the Shaykh says, وَهَذِهِ الْقَاعِدَةِ لَا تَخْتَصُّ بِالْأَسْمَاءِ فِي الْوَاقِعِ بَلْ كُلُّ لَفْظٍ فَإِنَّهُ يَدُلُّ عَلَى الْمَعْنَى بِالْمُطَابَقَةِ وَالتَّضَمُّنِ وَالِالْتِزَامِ. بالمطابقة باعتبار دلالة اللفظ على جميع المعنى وتكون نعم. So المطابقة in English like to conformity. The name of Allah conforms to the meaning that is intended. It matches and it indicates that exactly. But then you have at-tadammun, meaning that it indicates the name in some form of inclusion. In some form of inclusion of it. أي أجزاء المعنى. And al-iltizam is when it indicates, the word indicates the meaning على معنى خارج لا يدخل تحت الاشتقاق, where it indicates a different meaning, something separate that isn't directly under that name or attribute. It is a secondary thing, but it's indicated because this name necessitates it. It doesn't mean it, the meaning doesn't mean that thing, but from the meaning, it's something that is necessitated. You'll see that from the examples. The Shaykh says, if you said, هذه دار, this is a house. Imagine now, you see a house, this is a house. So now then, this house has bricks, it has rooms, it has the various spaces, ceiling, all of the different aspects within it. And all of those are indicated by direct meaning. A house, by its very nature, has bricks or something that it's built of. By its very nature, it has rooms and space inside. That is from the mutabaqa. That is what the word house means directly. But then دلالتها على كل حجرة بعينها أو كل برحة بعينها دلالة تضمن. As for one brick, if you take one brick out of the wall, can I call this brick a house? Not directly, but the brick is a part of that house. So the word house includes each individual brick under the general title. Each brick by itself is incorporated into the word house. The word house wouldn't indicate a brick by itself, but within that entity now it incorporates it in, because the whole house is built of all of these individual bricks. That's تضمن. ودلالتها على أن لها بانيا دلالة التزام لأنه لا بد من بان. What about the builder who built the house? The word house, does it mean a builder? Nothing at all. A house, everybody knows a house, nothing to do with the builder. But al-iltizam, how did the house get there? It was built by a builder. So by necessity, you have the builder connected to the house as well. By necessity, it necessitates that al-iltizam, there must have been a builder to build that house. Shaykh gives another example. He says the word car, as-sayyara. So the word car indicates all of the car, the frame of the car, the chassis of the car, the wheels of the car, the engine of the car, the pipes in the car. All of those bits together are the car. So that is a car. All of that chassis, wheels, seats, everything, that's a car. Then just the wheels, the tires or the wheels, by themselves, they are not a car. But the word car incorporates them because they are a section, a part of that car. And then وَتَدُلُّ عَلَى الَّذِي صَنَعَهَا, then the factory and the worker who built the car, not indicated by the word car but necessitated. The car was built by someone, some factory, some workers, they built that car. So that is necessitated. So here that's what he says, that the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala indicate the essence of Allah and the attributes of Allah, either mutabaqa, the direct meaning, the tadammun, it incorporates those aspects, or iltizam, that it necessitates something. So an example here, al-Khaliq, the creator. al-Khaliq يدل على ذات الله وعلى صفة الخلق بالمطابقة. So al-Khaliq, who is al-Khaliq? Allah. So it indicates by the clear meaning, the mutabaqa, Allah. Al-Khaliq is one of the names of Allah. It indicates clearly also the attribute of al-Khalq, direct and clear from the word, from the name al-Khaliq. That is mutabaqa, direct, clear, blatant meanings. But then يدل على الذات وحدها وعلى صفة الخلق وحدها بالتضمن. The name al-Khaliq indicates Allah. If you were only saying that part, then by itself that would be considered tadammun, because it isn't just Allah that it indicates also the attribute as well. So individually, just upon the essence of Allah and just upon the attribute, individually, that's what it includes. includes this, includes that, and then together that would be the mutabaqa of the actual meaning of that name. So these are the subsections separate, they are tadammun. And then also, by necessity, if Allah is al-Khaliq, He is the creator, it necessitates that Allah has al-ilm, Allah has al-Qudrah, Allah has knowledge and Allah has ability. It necessitates that al-Khaliq is going to be the one who has knowledge, who has ability, who has power. So all of those other things are necessitated. They are not indicated directly by the name al-Khaliq and the attribute al-Khalq, but they are necessitated. Al-Khalq occurs with knowledge and with ability. So this is what the Shaykh is highlighting in this principle, that with the names and attributes of Allah, there is the mutabaqah, the conformity, the direct meaning of that name or attribute. Then there are the sections that it incorporates, the tadammun, like the house incorporates every brick that makes it up. And then there is the necessity, what it necessitates from other things, even though it doesn't indicate them directly with that name. ولهذا لما ذكر الله خلق السماوات والأرض قال لتعلموا أن الله على كل شيء قدير وأن الله قد أحاط بكل شيء علما. So when Allah spoke about the creation of the heavens and the earth, Allah mentioned, so that you know that indeed He is upon all affairs capable, that He has the qudrah, and that He encompasses everything with His knowledge, that He has ilm. So al-Khaliq, by necessity, is the one with qudrah and the one with ilm. That's what it means, the iltizam. ودلالة التزام مفيدة جدا لطالب العلم إذا تدبر المعنى ووفقه الله تعالى فهما للتلازم فإنه بذلك يحصل من الدليل الواحد على مسائل كثيرة. This iltizam section, what something necessitates, as Shaykh al-Uthaymin says, it is very beneficial for the student of knowledge. Because if you can then work out what it necessitates, and there could be multiple things, that opens up vast amounts of knowledge to you then. It opens up vast amounts of knowledge and vast amount of understanding of how the names and attributes of Allah necessitate this and they necessitate that. And so it closes the door to the people of innovation who want to block this and block this and block that. When you understand how a certain name or attribute necessitates this, it must necessitate that. So this, the Shaykh said, is very beneficial for the student of knowledge, for the one who understands those affairs. Also here the Shaykh highlights a point regarding the speech. He says, وَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّازِمَ مِنْ قَوْلِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى وَقَوْلِ رَسُولِهِ صلى الله عليه وسلم إِذَا صَحَّ أَنْ يَكُونَ لَازِمًا فَهُوَ حَقٌّ. That something, if it is necessitated by the speech of Allah or the speech of the Messenger, then that is haqq. Something that is correctly, genuinely necessitated from the speech of Allah and the Messenger, then that will be truth. ذلك لأن كلام الله ورسوله حق ولازم الحق حق. Because the speech of Allah and His Messenger is the truth. So whatever that truth necessitates, that is also truth. ولأن الله تعالى عالم بما يكون لازما من كلامه وكلام رسوله فيكون مرادا. And because Allah knows what would be necessitated by such and such a speech. And so, whatever Allah says that, and the Messenger says that, knowing what it necessitates. And so what it necessitates is also haqq, because if it necessitated some batil, then Allah would not have, and the Messenger would not have mentioned certain speech or whatever, if it necessitated that, and it does not. The speech of Allah and the Messenger, all of it is haqq, and so everything it necessitates is haqq. But here the Shaykh, he highlights أما اللازم من قول أحد سوى قول الله ورسوله فله ثلاث حالات. As for what is necessitated by the statement of a person, then that is different. What is necessitated by the statement of a person has three circumstances. Firstly, أن يذكر للقائل ويلتزم به، مثل أن يقول من ينفي الصفات الفعلية لمن يثبتها يلزم من إثباتك الصفات الفعلية لله عز وجل أن يكون من أفعاله ما هو حادث، فيقول المثبت نعم وأنا ألتزم بذلك، فإن الله تعالى لم يزل ولا يزال فعالا لما يريد، ولا نفاد لأقواله وأفعاله، وحدوث أحاد فعله تعالى لا يستلزم نقصا في حقه. The first is that you mention to the person, the speaker, what is necessitated by his statement, and he affirms that. He affirms what is necessitated by his statement. يذكر للقائل ويلتزم به. That you mention to the statement of the one who's saying it and what is necessitated by it, and he conforms to that. The second is أن يذكر له ويمنع التلازم بينه وبين قوله. That you mention to the person your statement necessitates X, Y, and Z, but he denies that, rejects it. No, that is not what I intended. That is not what is necessitated by my statement. That could be the second circumstance. And thirdly, أن يكون اللازم مسكوتا عنه فلا يذكر بالتزام ولا منع فحكمه في هذه الحال ألا ينسب إلى القائل. The third possibility is that what is necessitated by a statement is you remain silent upon it. Neither is it affirmed nor is it rejected. Then in that case, the Shaykh says the default understanding is that you cannot and you don't associate that statement or that necessity to that person. ألا ينسب إلى القائل, because you have a possibility, maybe he intended that, maybe he did not. لأنه يحتمل لو ذكر له أن يلتزم به أو يمنع التلازم، يحتمل لو ذكر له فتبين له لزومه أو بطلانه أن يرجع عن قوله. Because it's possible that if you were to say to that person, your statement necessitates such and such, that he may say, actually in that case I retract that. Or he may say, absolutely, that's what I intended, that's what it necessitates. Either is possible. So before anything is established, the Shaykh says you do not associate to that person the necessity from his statement, because he may reject that or deny that when it's clarified to him. But there's a lot of detail on that section. Our intention is not to go into all of that detail now. We'll have to stop on that section for this week then, and we'll do a little bit more. We'll do maybe 2 sessions, at least maybe 3 sessions. Just do some of these principles in brief, just a summary of it to get an idea of the names and attributes. It'll help you to understand al-Wasitiyyah even better. So we'll carry on from that section next time, inshallah ta'ala. Just briefly summarizing these principles in that same way, 4 or 5 per session, inshallah ta'ala, from next time. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.